Hey, this is your Olympic hero, Kurt Angle, and I don't suck, and neither does the Piffles podcast. But anyone who plays the Riders, they suck. Oh, it's true. It's damn true.
Let's go, Rider Nation.
I'm ready. I'm ready. Yeah, here we go. Get your feeling now. Get 'em high, get 'em low, 'cause we're dealing now. Everybody's giving it all they got, 'cause we're ready.
Welcome into the Piffles podcast, your Saskatchewan Roughriders fan podcast. Thanks for joining us. That was the Arcana Kings with Here We Go. My name is Alex.
Steve.
And I'm in the home of the Red Barn, God's country. Perfection was born here. Welcome to Mooseman, Saskatchewan.
Yeah, but Ferlin was
Home
born
of Mac
there.
the Moose.
Was Fern actually born here? To be fair, I was born here first, so I called dibs.
And they kept trying until they got Ferlin, and look
And then
what
they
happened.
just gave up.
Yeah. Welcome to those listening on your favorite podcast platform, viewers on YouTube, and of course, new viewers on SaskTel Max. Happy to have you on board here. We have so much to talk about. Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. There's a lot going on in the CFL. You can give us a follow first on Twitter at PifflesPod. You can give me a follow at RealAlexD.
Find me at Safamod.
And as always, I do not need nor want your pity follows at Greg on Sports. On X.
Piffles Podcast brought to you by Dairy Queen on Elphinstone Street and Sass Drive in Regina. Make sure you check them out, especially when it's 30 degrees outside. It's a good time for a blizzard. Let's get things started here. Talk some football. It's time for the opening kickoff. All right, so we'll go over this Riders at Montreal Alouettes game from last week. Losing 41-12, Riders dropped the record to 4-5. Before we dig into this, am I the only one that I'm not concerned about this loss? Does this loss bother you guys? Because it doesn't really mean much to me.
It didn't really bother me as much. What bothered me the entire time was I was driving, so I had to listen to it on the radio. And then that bothered me. And then I had to listen to the call-in show after, and just listening to everyone basically getting their pitchforks and torches ready. They wanted to run everyone out of town, and that's just not the way how this is going to work. So, yes, I've heard it from Belton, I've heard it from Eddie Steele, I've heard it from every former player that don't bring travel into it. These guys are professionals. I am sorry, that team looked tired and flat. Like, you can't tell me that travel didn't have anything to do with it, or something to do with it. We probably wouldn't have won the way we played, but still, it wasn't good.
I don't know if it was the travel. It's just the lack of preparation days. That was the big thing. But we're going to talk about we'll talk about preparation in a bit, because I have that listed here. And the reason why I'm not too worried about this, the Riders go to Montreal every second year and get blown out anyway. I expect that most of the time when they go to Montreal, even if the team's good. So for them to lose this game, I'm more disappointed. It's one of those I'm not mad at you, I'm just disappointed kind of things. I was just, they just didn't show up. They just didn't care. And that was the part that frustrates me, especially with how this team has gone the last couple of years. I expect more out of them, and hopefully I know we'll see a better team against BC, but just losing the game and getting blown out, to me, whatever. I mean, I expect that in Montreal.
You
It's
expected
really
more
four
out of them?
words to it. St. Catherine Street Blue.
I may have gotten that once or twice.
I've only been to Montreal
It's
once, and I avoided
one day
it.
of practice. One day of practice. Tons of flying over the last 3 weeks. You go Regina to BC, back to Regina, out to Halifax, back to Regina, back to Montreal. That's a lot of travel. And I don't care what they say, whether travel plays into it or not, but you combine that with 1 day of practice and the nightlife of Montreal. Just erase this one from your memory bank and come back next week prepared.
All right. So again, it was a 41-12 loss. Really, it was 41-6. Watching that game at halftime when it was 21-3, I had the game on in the second half, but I didn't really pay attention to it because I knew the game was over. I was like, all right, this is one of those 40-6 kind of games. And it almost ended up that way. But the loss of Mason Fine obviously is the big story of this one with what appears to be a hamstring injury, which Craig Dickenson said after the game they're looking at about 2 to 3 weeks. So Jake Dolegala is going to be the guy to go in. Mason Fine did not look good. He was missing a lot of throws, wasn't throwing it far by any means. And then Dolegala didn't really look much better either, especially to start. He finally got into a bit of a rhythm later in the second half, but nothing to write home about. I don't even know what to say about this game.
I just want to know, are they like serving corn on the cob on the Riders sidelines? Why does Jake Dolegala feel like he's got butter on his hands? He cannot hang onto the ball. It's just ridiculous. It's just like they give him, like, do the old little Giants give him the stick him, so he has to like basically slap his hands together to pull him apart? Because I haven't seen a quarterback fumble the ball this many times in a row. This is games in a row. It's wild.
I have to say it's amazing that you made a Little Giants reference. I don't think I've made one of those in years, and I made one at work today too. They're few and far between. To have two in one day, that's a solid day.
I think we'll stick with the offense for a little bit. Just I want to say I was disappointed that we didn't see Shea Patterson. I think a lot of fans were, but also he was really only available in an emergency situation. His knee's still a bit messed up. I would have rather, especially after Dolegala got some of the second quarter and then the third quarter, I would have rather seen somebody out there in the fourth. But if you're not going to have a healthy quarterback in there, I guess their hands were tied really with what happened. So I think a lot of people kind of needed to hear that because a lot of people don't even know that Shea Patterson's hurt. So that's why we saw Dolegala continue on through the blowout.
Which also might explain, if Patterson's been nicked up, that might explain why Dolegala has been doing those weird short yardage plays for the last couple games too. Because it made no sense to roll Dolegala out there. But yeah, Patterson's nicked up. That makes sense.
It's really terrifying to think that if Shea Patterson is hurt at points in that game, we were one hit away from Nick Marshall lining up at quarterback. Which, I mean, he couldn't have done worse than Dolegala did that game, but still, that QB depth was getting pretty scary thin.
I do want to give a positive to the offense because it's been a while since we've seen the run game actually perform and put up some numbers. And they did this game, and they did throughout the game too. Jamal Morrow had 81 yards rushing. So I think now more than ever, and we'll talk about this later when we look at the BC game, but the run game is so vital to the Riders right now. And for them to get it going a little bit in this game against Montreal, I think was a step in the right direction. I'm still not going to put too much stock into it, but got to find something positive about that game, and that was definitely it. Was the run game.
We've been begging for it all
All
year.
right, well,
to see that run game do something. So yeah, it was great to have at least one positive come out of that game.
Well, we'll flip over to the defensive side, and I think it all started going downhill right when we found out Caleb Evans was going to start that game, and it wasn't going to be Cody Fajardo. I thought that was just talk from Jason Moss that Fajardo wasn't going to play or was a game time decision. And it ended up being a great decision for Montreal because they kept their quarterback healthy. And Caleb Evans looked, I mean, the Riders have been notorious over the years for making backups look great. And that's what they did with Caleb Evans.
I have a term for that. It's called Spurgeon 1.
Well, Buck Pierce was a nobody until he showed up at Taylor Field one day as a third stringer in BC, and made a nice career out of that.
Yeah, but okay, Buck Pierce, that was actually a
Taylor
decent quarterback.
Cornelius.
Buck Pierce was a good quarterback. Spurgeon Wynn beat the Riders on 2 separate occasions with 2 different teams and could do nothing after that. So
Yeah, and cost the Riders a home playoff game in 2004. I'll still never forgive him for that one. And G. Roy Simon too, catching that touchdown at the end of a meaningless game for BC.
But G-Roy made up for that.
Yeah,
2013.
this is true. He
We'll
did.
forgive him.
But I think that Caleb Evans starting, I think that threw the defense off a little bit. I don't think they were ready for a running quarterback like that. They were expecting a guy to be a little bit more in the pocket with Cody Fajardo. They definitely prepared for Cody Fajardo because they had no idea what Caleb Evans was going to do. And to me, again, this is the preparation side of things. They had no idea what they were doing on defense. After the first drive, they got ran over. You knew they were going to continue doing that, and nothing changed. Caleb Evans kept running well. And this was without William Stanback as well, too. They just kept running the ball down the Riders' throat, and it was frustrating to watch because you have a backup quarterback, you're going to lean to the run, and when you have a running quarterback, you're going to run it even more than you normally would with a regular backup quarterback. So I think it threw the defense off. I don't think Shivers was ready for it. I wish they would have had Micah Tights or Larry Dean spy the running back or the quarterback more than they did. Putting Micah Tights dropping into coverage and him covering Austin Mack was baffling to me. That defense was not ready for this game, and it clearly showed.
we have 2 games where the starting quarterback has gone out and the defense has not been able to figure it out. I know everyone talks, and I like Shivers as a coach. I have serious concerns about his ability to transition when his game plan gets scrapped. Look at that original BC game original BC game. They had a perfect plan against Verdum Adams. Adams goes out, and then they got lost. BC rallied, and the defense couldn't do anything. Cody Fajardo's out. It's Caleb Evans. Jamie Nye changed his pick pre-game going, this is going to be a blowout. He was right. He thought it was going to be for the Riders. Luckily, his CFL.ca pick was right for his sake. But everyone expected the Riders to walk all over Caleb Evans, and they got schooled because they could not transition off of, oh crap, our game plan's out. Oh, well, we'll just roll with it. There needs to be some way to figure this out and make the proper changes, but they just seem to be stuck on their game plans.
It is crazy to me if you think about it. The week before, they would have game planned all week for a near identical quarterback in Dustin Crum, that mobile guy with an okay arm. It's the fact that they couldn't turn it around from the opening play was surprising to everybody. There's enough talent on that defense. They should have been able to contain Caleb Evans without any kind of concern, and yet they put up a 40 burger on us.
All right, so who do you blame for the lack of preparedness? Do you blame this on travel and short week? Do you blame it on coaches? Do you blame it on the players? What do you guys think?
Yes.
I blame it on the guy who looks like he's doing a Rubik's Cube in his head every time the camera shows him.
That would be Craig Dickenson, head coach.
Yes. Why does he always look so confused?
Because he's always so confused.
I joked about this, but there's a lot of truth that's said in jest that he just looks like he doesn't know what's going on. And every time they show him, he just looks just totally out to lunch. And I've never seen a coach look like that so much before in my life. He knows the camera's on him at all times. But to look that out of it just seems weird to me. Well, it just seems so weird to me because there's no control of the team. You can look at Edmonton, 0-9. You know who's in control of that team. You can look at the Toronto Argonauts, 7-1. When they show the sidelines, you know who's in charge of that team. That's a Ryan Dinwiddie-led team. You don't see that here in Saskatchewan. I don't know who's controlling this team. Not that he has to be going out and yelling and screaming and whatnot. That works for some coaches. Obviously, that's not a Craig Dickenson type thing. But there's no command of the locker room, of the players, of the field. And this goes back to last year. I said the same thing last year about when it was after one of their losses and the media asked him, what's the vibe like in the locker room? He says, I don't know. I haven't gone in there and talked. That's the players' thing. No. That is still your room. That is the head coach goes in there and everybody shuts up and they listen to you. And I don't feel that there's that respect in that locker room for him that same way that it should be. And that just goes to their preparedness. They were not ready to go. And yeah, you can blame travel on that. Yeah, you can blame a short week. You can blame the players for maybe not giving it all, especially in the second half when they knew the game was pretty much over. But to me, that's all on the coach. That's all coaching. And that's the frustrating part for me as a Rider fan right now is it's time and time and time again we're seeing this from this team and nothing's improving from the coach. Everybody should be trying to improve. It doesn't look like Craig Dickinson's trying, and that's frustrating to me. So after the game,
I can't
obviously,
top that. That is
Yeah.
Obviously, everyone now seems to call for Craig Dickenson to be fired. I've been on that train for a year and a half. I'm not going to go into that more right now. My question to you guys, will it happen mid-season? Will the Riders move on from Craig Dickenson?
If you would have asked me that
I wanna
4 weeks ago, I would have told you no. There's no chance. They're just not going to make that call. But as the season has gone on and some of these losses being as embarrassing as they are and unprepared as they are, and seeing some that could be clearly pointed towards the head coach for just questionable at best coaching decisions, I'm starting to think yes. And I think it happens Monday morning. You're going to see, if you're going to make a change, your bye week is the chance to do it. You're not going to have a better opportunity than next week. Prepare for Labor Day with whoever you're going to run the season out with and go. So if it doesn't happen Monday morning, I don't think it happens at all.
Greg, I know you want to jump in on this. I'll let you get there in a second. Steve, don't tease me like this because Monday's my birthday. This would be the best birthday gift for me. So don't get my hopes up here, okay?
I think it happens. I do.
Greg?
I honestly don't think you know what you think I'm teeing up here. Who? That's my only problem. Who? If it not Dickey, then who? There's only one name that I think maybe to get you through the year, and only because Hamilton just released him. Tommy Condell's out there, and that might be the only guy that might be head coach ready right now. But I don't like it, and I see Steve doesn't like it. Alex doesn't like it.
No, I'd rather
Then
run
who?
with Dickenson.
Well, there you go. So that's what I mean.
I
There's
think
no
it
one
comes.
out there.
I don't think they hire from outside during the season. I think they run out the season with either Shivers or Bolduc as your interim head coach and run it out. There's no chance that they hire somebody from outside of the organization, and there's less of a chance that they hire somebody like Tommy Condell, who just got fired as offensive coordinator. And you never see a guy get let go as OC and then instantly become head coach. Never happened. Hasn't happened ever, Jason Moss. But I don't see a situation where they make that call. And if you're Condell, are you signing for multiple years? Or are you just signing for the next 6 months?
Whoever's going to be in that role is lame duck anyways. It doesn't matter if they're on the staff or not. So
Yeah,
and that's why it doesn't happen from outside.
Yeah, and that's why I don't think a move will actually happen. For one, the Riders are 4-5. They're in third place in the West. They're still in a playoff spot. There's not going to be a crossover because have you seen those two teams in the bottom in the East? That's not going to happen. I think Calgary will still find a way to string some wins together. They got Edmonton coming up twice. So, I mean, they should win both those games. if it were to happen, one, I think it does happen in the bye week. I can't see it being Shivers. I think he has too much on his plate with being defensive coordinator. Bolduc was the other name that I had from internally that could maybe do it. Running backs coach. I mean, it's not like they were really using the running backs up until this last week anyway. So what's he doing, right? He might as well be the head coach at this point. But if you're looking at externally and someone that could potentially be here longer than this year, the only name I thought of was Paul Lapalisse.
He
But
ain't
would
turned down the
he-
double dip. He's double dipping right now.
But yeah, is he gonna leave TSN to do that, to basically be a lame duck coach? I don't think so. So I don't think, like, there's no winning in this for me for the Riders. Yeah, you could realistically give Bolduc or Shivers a shot at it and see what happens, but you kind of almost have to stay with Craig Dickenson, don't you?
J.O. Pop.
No. I can't see that.
I don't see O'Day ever wanting to patrol the sidelines like Jim Pop always wanted to be a head coach, but would that be
Do the
fun?
Riders have an assistant head coach right now? On their roster, they don't have, like, their coaching staff on the Riderville website, they don't have an actual assistant head coach, which to me is odd. I don't remember the last time I saw a team not have somebody listed as run game coordinator and assistant head coach. Maybe that's what they need, is somebody to take on some of those responsibilities. Keep Dickenson on staff, but maybe let him pawn some of that stuff off to, I don't know, an assistant head coach.
Give it to Drew Tate. Why not? Let him do the on-field game management. It can't be any worse, can it? Like, you might as well.
But on the flip side, it's Drew Tate.
Great
What did
writer.
I
the
say?
I have a
greatest
lot of
writer.
hate for Drew Tate after the
All right, so obviously everyone's upset about Craig Dickenson. I had a little bit of fun on Sunday morning. I rewrote the lyrics for Living on a Prayer to get Dickey out of here, knowing that people would either A, love it, or B, hate it. And I was right, both of them.
Yes.
They love and hate it. I don't think we've had a Facebook post go off quite like that one. But it just goes to show how many people, I mean, Craig Dickenson said it himself. Everybody has a podcast. Everybody has an opinion. All the
Hi,
fans
Craig.
have an opinion here. Yeah, everybody has an opinion, and judging by what our social media mentions were on Facebook, yeah, a lot of people are pretty fed up. But I mean, you can't blame him for injuries. You can't blame him for the players that are brought in. I mean, there's so many variables, but it is what it is, I guess.
1 second. Can I make a request? Craig, next, can you this week tell us if you're watching on Max, YouTube, or if you just listen? Can you be a little more specific on how you get your podcast information?
Hopefully somebody asks them. That'll be great. So after this game, Riders obviously need a quarterback now that Mason Fine is out. They went out and acquired Antonio Pipkin from Hamilton for kicker Kari Vedvik. I'm not going to try and spin this and sell you on Antonio Pipkin. One, he can run the short yardage, I guess, so that's good. And they have an emergency backup, a guy with experience. Good. They got something for literally nothing. Vedvik was never getting his job back. Adam Korsak has been fantastic, and Vedvik was never going to see the field again as a Rider, barring an injury. So to get anything out of or from a trade for Vedvik is great. To get a quarterback, which you desperately need right now, I think that was a big win for the Riders.
I'm trying to figure out Hamilton's angle on this. It's not like they had a bulk of quarterbacks in their back pocket. They literally signed a guy named Glass with their history this year. Talk about gambling. So, like, it made no sense for me. But I'm just surprised how, like, somehow backup punter replaced backup quarterback on the Rider fans love chart this week. I've never seen so many people pissed off about losing a punter.
It's been insane to watch. Like, with given how good Korsak has been, I can't understand why anybody would be upset at this trade. Like, it's not like Vedvik was absolutely lights out as a punter. He was a solid punter, but he was no Hall of Famer by any stretch. He wasn't going to do anything long term. He was going to be an adequate punter in the CFL. And to get a guy with experience, let alone at the quarterback position when every QB in the league seems to be going down, is an absurd trade to me. Yes, we understand Pipkin is not the championship level quarterback. We know he's not going to lead us to glory. But what he might do is be able to put on a jersey next week, healthy wise. And that's enough for a backup punter. I don't care if his extent with the team is holding a clipboard for the rest of the season.
I have no idea why I'm
If
dropping
that's
out
all
here,
he
guys.
does, that if that's all he ever does, that's more than enough. If his clipboard holding skills match that of Drew Tate as a rider, good enough.
All right. Halfway through the season, Riders are 4-5. 2 questions. Are they where you thought they'd be, at least record-wise, halfway through the year?
I had a few more wins. I know that for a fact. I had them as a 12 win or 13 win team this year. They got to pick it up a bit. Got to pick it up. Just saying. They're going to finish in a playoff spot. Like we said, between Ottawa and Hamilton, one of them ain't going to cross over. They might be lucky to be in third place in their own division. So the Riders should be able to find a playoff spot this year.
I'm going to go out on a crazy limb here. And yes, I agree the Riders are not where we expected them to be. I thought 11, 12 wins. Now I'll be happy with 9-9. I think that's a reasonable target. But I'm going to put it out there that the Edmonton Elks will be closer to a playoff spot at the end of the season than the Calgary Stampeders. With Trey Ford at quarterback. I liked what they did last week to start the half. Yes, they floundered against Winnipeg, but they came out hot. I think they finally pick up a win soon. I don't think they make the playoffs, but I think they finish ahead of the Stampeders by season's end.
So you are
And I
predicting.
assume that'll go as well as my prediction for the Riders finishing second in the West and 12-6 or 11-7. So maybe my prediction skills aren't that great.
I had them at 9-9 this year, so I mean, I guess that's kind of on par for where they are now. But I actually thought they'd be a little bit better in the first half of the year. All things considering, you're down to your third string quarterback, you're still in a playoff spot. That's an okay place to be in right now. But with these next few games coming up, BC, then Winnipeg twice, yikes! All of a sudden, you're probably looking at 4-8. And then you have Edmonton after that. And that's when things will, I mean, who knows? Maybe Mason finds back after that and lights it up and turns the team into a contender. But I don't know. We'll have to see from there. That's the opening kickoff presented by Kathy Festian of Royal LePage Regina Realty. Let's jump to our Churchill Brewing Company odds and end zones. And before we get started talking about the big thing around the CFL, I do want to give a special shout out to Ariel Zer, Director of Communications for the Riders and the Saskatchewan Roughriders, giving us a couple great team signed footballs. Love this. Even got QB1, no, not Mason Fine, Trevor Harris on there as well. So they gave us a couple of them. I swear I'm not going to keep them. I want to, but what we're going to do is we don't know the final details yet. I just picked them up yesterday, but CFL Fans Fight Cancer event at Grey Cup happens yearly. We ran that last year. We're going to find out a way to raise money for that through these footballs. So somebody here is going to own one of these guys, and hopefully we can raise some money for cancer. So that we'll get you some details on that. But a big shout out to Ariel and the community leads over with the Riders. I just sent an email and said, hey, we want to do something for CFL fans fight cancer. I'll go buy a football. Can you help me get the team to sign it? And she's like, oh, hey, I got 2 of them for you. So that was excellent. Thank you very much, Ariel, and to the riders for that. Okay. Victor Cui and the Edmonton Elks. This is all anybody's talking about. News came out on Monday night. Farhan Lalji broke it that Victor Cui and the Elks mutually parted ways, which is not a thing. You don't mutually part ways because somebody always initiates it. This was initiated by the board of directors for the Edmonton Elks. I did not see that coming. What was your guys' first initial reaction when you saw that?
For those listening, Steve gave a shocked face.
Realize it.
Yeah.
Hey, we're on video now. We can do those kinds of things. I mean, shock is about as good a descriptor as you can have. I don't think there's anybody out there that could have said, I think Victor Cui gets fired this week. Given the public persona that he's put out there, he's been a very positive presence for the league, very out there, very personable. Now, whether that's the case behind the scenes, who knows? You're starting to hear things come out that might not be the case, and you're starting to understand why maybe this happened. But I don't think anybody saw this coming. If anybody was going to get fired in Edmonton, I assumed it would have happened, one level down, not at the president level.
Cui's problem is he only had 1 job title. If he had 4, he might have survived this. Like,
been given a vote of confidence after as well.
So it blew my mind. Like, I could not believe this is not a move you make mid-season. Usually a move like this made mid-season, there's usually a blockbuster story that comes out, and I'm having Tillman flashbacks right now. Anyway, sorry. It's not something that happens often. And the fact that it's happening in Edmonton right now, I tweeted out, the Elks have played 9 games and they're 0-10. It's not a good look for the team that's already struggling to try to find some kind of rudder to move forward, and they just keep on smashing a pot in the rocks right now.
Over in Edmonton, a lot of people want Chris Jones fired. Obviously, usually the second year of a Chris Jones rebuild, you see growth. We have not seen that this year. They haven't won a game. Victor Cui didn't hire Chris Jones. Chris Jones was hired a month before Victor Cui was hired as president of the Elks. I wonder if Victor Cui wanted to make a move regarding Chris Jones, take away one of his titles, maybe put G. Roy Simon as the official GM and bump Jones away from that and make him just the head coach and defensive coordinator. Maybe the board of directors didn't like that. I don't know. The board seems to really love Chris Jones over in Edmonton. I really wonder what the rest of this story is, because this came as a shock to me. I know I've heard around the league, some executives just down highway number 2 don't really like Victor Cui just based off some of his initiatives and what he wants to do. When, no, that's our thing. Well, it can be more than one team's thing. Rough Riders. But I was really impressed with his initiatives to try and get more fans in. And that's something that the league needed. And I thought he did pretty well. Obviously, having a winning team would have definitely helped. You would have seen their attendance climb instead of decline. But something just doesn't add up here. I really hope we'll get something that resembles the actual story fairly soon, but I don't think we will. We won't get the full story. There's no way that's ever coming out. But it just seems to me like my initial thought is Victor Cui wanted to do some things. The Old Boys Club said no. Well, Victor built the MMA company that he owns, that he started, One Fighting, into a multi-billion dollar corporation. I think the guy knows what he's doing in terms of marketing and how to get people engaged. So there's something there between him and the board that just, I want to know what it is just out of curiosity, but we'll likely never know. So I sure hope we find out. That'd be great.
But we may have to wait for Victor Cui's tell-all book. Might be a few years, but hopefully there is
Oh
one. And
no,
we
I'm
get the
certain
real
it's going to
story.
come out sooner than that. Because you know someone on the board is going to leak to some Edmonton reporter. This is where I wish Terry Jones was still around, because someone on the board would say something to Terry Jones. Terry Jones would put it out into public like it's gospel, and then Cui would have to respond. But the fact that a guy with new ideas, fresh ideas, it actually kind of concerns me about the CFL as a whole. When, say what you want, Gary Stern, love him or hate him, the guy had a passion. He was trying to do things in Montreal. He's gone. Victor Cui, who also was trying to do things, trying to do new things, he's gone in less than a year. Like we're just we're falling into the same trap over and over again with this league. Like, we need new ideas, we need new blood, and Chris Jones and Wally. 100% Wally Buono's the next president of the Elks. I almost called him the wrong name, but because that's probably what's going to happen. Because they went and got Wally Buono to go, hey, hire Chris Jones. Okay. And then they hired a president. That was always backwards to me, and it looks like it probably was the beginning of the end for him.
I don't know. Wally did say in that interview with Farhan Lalji on what was it, Saturday night, he's definitely retired. Definitely retired. Everybody who's unretired has always said that. So I mean, maybe you're onto something there with Wally,
The
at
Terry
least in
Funk
the
of the
interim,
CFL, Wally
in
Buono.
Edmonton. He's just always there. Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what happens with Edmonton, especially if they keep losing the way that they are, to blowing 22-point leads and still losing by almost double digits. Like, just it's beyond sad. It's just bad for the league overall. And to lose a guy is not
betting
good.
on the Elks right now is like betting on the Washington Generals to beat the Globetrotters. They're due. They're due.
I thought they were due. Yeah, that's the
Had to
Simpsons
jam it in
reference
there.
this week,
Had
Steve.
to jam it in there because we were coming to the end.
I know.
Okay.
I know.
Flipping to on the field, Zach Collaros gets hurt against those Elks last week. We can debate the hit all we want. We'll save that let the Turf District deal with that on their show this week. Dru Brown comes in relief, looked excellent, and John Hodge of 3 Down Nation said Dru Brown is better than half the starting QBs in this league. QB1s, not just QBs starting right now, because like 6 of them are all backups. Is Dru Brown actually the best QB2, but also is he better than a lot of QB1s in this league?
John Hodge. That take is about as good as his hat selection. And there's very few people that will get that joke.
You don't like the fedora?
And they will find that hilarious. I did
you
not
don't
like
the fedora.
The people that got that joke are laughing their butts off right now. John Hodge also says Nick Dembski's a 1,000-yard receiver, and he hasn't even been close. Like, I like John Hodge, but some of his takes are not worth the characters he uses. Brown looked good. Sure. It was the Elks. Who cares? Let's see against some real competition.
Pretty much that. I'm not ready to anoint him as the next Hall of Famer by any stretch. The guy had one good game against an absolutely garbage football team. And on a week when the team didn't get to prepare for him. We saw with Saskatchewan, Montreal, that plays into it a lot. Not having the ability to prepare for the guy that you're facing is a big deal. Let's see how he does against stronger competition before we anoint him as the next one. There's talent there, no question. I just don't think it's quite to the level that we're hearing yet.
I will side with Hodge a little bit on one thing, though, is that he's probably the best backup in the league, just based on the fact he's been in that system for so long. He's been there for a few years. You look how much turnover there is in terms of quarterbacks in the CFL, and he's kind of been that mainstay. Collaros and Dru Brown have been that mainstay in Winnipeg the last few years. Every other team has gone through the cycle. So to have that continuity is a huge thing. And if he ends up having to play, because, I know Collaros didn't practice in day one this week. I didn't see what happened after. But they have what seems to be a viable backup. And that's important in this league. I don't know if I'll say he's better than half the starting quarterbacks, but I think he's better than a few that started this league or started this season, QB1s.
Taylor Cornelius.
So, I can kind of side with Hodge on that. So halfway through the year, every team in the West has played 9 games. Right now, who is the MOP? Who is the most outstanding player in the CFL?
Chad, I refuse to call him Swag Kelly.
I don't think there's really any question right now. Yeah, it's Chad Kelly right now, especially if Collaros is out for any length of time after his head or neck injury. I don't think there's really any question right now. What he's doing in Toronto, especially given his inexperience in the CFL, is fairly solid. He's just not making mistakes.
You could make a argument for Vernon Adams the way he plays, but he's been injured for a few games. But yeah, it's unfortunately I think Kelly is the easy favorite right now.
I think it comes down to 5 names, which I could see all 5 of them really making really good cases. Zach Collaros is one of them. Leads the league in touchdowns, leads the league in passing. The team's back to being, I don't want to say unstoppable, but they've gone back to looking like the Winnipeg Blue Bombers of the last few years. He's one of them. Chad Kelly, of course, making me eat a lot of crow. On this show, I went out and said that I don't think this guy's it. He just doesn't have the passion. He doesn't have the heart. He doesn't want to be a CFL quarterback. This guy has been awesome, and it's great for the league. I agreed with Dave Naylor when he said he's the most important player in this league. I still think he is. And the fact that he's playing good and winning is great for the CFL. So Chad Kelly is in there. You can also make cases for Vernon Adams. He's been fantastic this year, except for one 6-interception game. But you take away the worst game from anybody, and obviously those stats will look better. But 2 names that are still putting up really good numbers and having excellent seasons, Willie Jefferson and Matthew Betts. I think they've been fantastic, and they've been better than just most outstanding defensive players. They've been most outstanding players this year. So a little bit of love to the defensive side.
It's really hard for a defensive
I'd love to
player
see.
to win.
I love Willie Jefferson. I know, but I would love to see it. I love Willie Jefferson. I think he's just a fantastic person, and then he's an even better football player on top of that, which is crazy. I'd love to see him double dip and get the MOP and defensive player. I know it won't happen, but a couple names there as well.
I would have agreed with Matthew Betts until about 3 weeks ago. He seems to have dropped off from his torrid start to start the season. He hasn't had a sack in 3 weeks. Now, in fairness, he did have a blocked punt last week to make up for the lack of sacks, but he's been kind of finding himself off the statistical sheet at the end of the week. He needs to get back on there. And he's facing a Riders O-line that has been suspect at best through most of the year. So he could do numbers this week, even though we did hold him off the stat sheet last time. So who knows?
No, he did.
He
get
got that one at
sack
the very
on
end, at the very last play.
Oh,
yeah.
I forgot.
And one more thing on the Churchill Brewing Company odds and end zones I want to bring up. Toronto on their bye. week again, third bye week already this year. Then they're done for bye weeks for the year. Just another scheduling fail by the CFL. Like, especially when you look at the Argos schedule and their one home game in the last 6 weeks was in Halifax. So this is a team who hasn't played at home in 6 weeks. All of a sudden, yeah, okay, you're go on a bye week again. Like, it's just ridiculous. It can't be. There's 9 teams in this league. It can't be that hard to make a schedule and balance it out a little bit. It can't be that
Apparently
tough.
it is, because we have this conversation every year.
There is no excuse. There's no excuse to see one team have all 3 of their bye weeks in the first half of the season. There is teams over the next half that still have 2 bye weeks to go, and Toronto's done. They're going to play 9 straight games to close it out, or 10. Is it 10? I think they play 10 straight
Maybe
games
10.
to
Yep.
close out the season. That's absurd. The whole point of bye weeks is to get that rest to keep guys healthy. It's a medical issue. They're doing this wrong. And they're really hurting the Argos in the process, because any chance they have of building momentum to start the season keeps getting quashed with these early bye weeks. They need to see that succession, keep fans excited, not sit them at home for another week and wait till yeah, you saw a great game last week. We'll see you in 2 weeks or 6 weeks at some point. Just questionable at best scheduling by the CFL, and we'll have this conversation again in 12 months. They'll do it again. They always do.
At least for Toronto's sake, they'll have the East wrapped up in week 14, so they can start resting pretty much any time they want after that. All right, let's take a look. Flipping back to the Riders, let's take a look at their upcoming game against the BC Lions here on Sunday, 5 o'clock, Mosaic Stadium. Jake Dolegala likely going to get the start. We'll find out for sure within the next couple days when practice begins, but Jake Dolegala is going to start. Are we going to see a Patterson package if he's healthy, or a Pipkin package to maybe throw off the BC Lions?
You met our coaching staff? That seems too ingenious. That's too much planning. I can't see them doing it. We looked all preseason. We were excited about this idea of a Patterson package. And we saw it, I think week 1, we saw a couple plays, and then that was it. And he's come in for short yardage and nothing else, and got hurt at some point. I don't see them doing it. They seem to be very content with keeping to whatever 20-play playbook that they've got, and straying away from that is just too much work. I don't know. I don't see it.
They need to do something, because the longer they can keep BC's offense off the field, the better. So they need to string together 8 long drives and just pray to God Betts doesn't kill a quarterback. That's all they need to do, and they'll be fine.
It sounds simple. It really does. But that goes into, kind of talked about a little bit, the run game. How vital is this running game going forward? I have an article coming out later this week that now more than ever, the Riders need their run game to show up. Teams say, it's a throwing league, but you still have to have the threat of a run game. This team needs to be a running team and have it be successful, especially over the next couple of weeks while Mason Fine is out, to at least stay in games, to keep opponents' offenses off the field, especially BC, who has such an explosive offense. This run game that they had and then didn't have and then now apparently have again after this Montreal game, they need this run game to show up. I don't think but it's got to be not predictable. We talked about this last week, and I'm sure a few weeks before as well, that the run game, we know when we can tell that it's going to be a shotgun handoff right up the middle, that's a problem. So I'm begging Kelly Jeffrey to give us some sort of creativity with the run game this week. Just a pitch here or there, just something, a counter, anything. I want to see something different than just a shotgun hand up the middle. They ran to the outside against Montreal. They ran off tackle, and it worked. That's where Jamal Morrow had his best runs last week. He had runs of 17 and 13 going off tackle, and we haven't seen him barely get 13 yards in a game, let alone on one single run over the last month. So I hope to see more of that.
Alex, can I interest you in a hitch screen?
Do you remember early in the season when we were playing? Do you remember early in the season when we played Edmonton? Was it week 1 and we had that really nifty goal line play, and we all thought, yes, we're gonna finally see some creativity in our offense, and that was the last time we saw it.
Because that was Darrell Walker, who is now cut. That was the problem. Darrell Walker was the creative.
Which sucks because
Yeah,
I like to.
he was the piece.
I like
He
this
was a creative
hustle. That's why
mind.
it was so hard to cut him. No, we didn't talk.
We didn't talk
I
about
just
that,
we didn't talk
actually.
about that.
Yeah. I think a lot of people were surprised, but when you start thinking about it, yeah, not surprised by any means of Darrell Walker getting released with the emergence of Bain and Tevin Jones and Jareth Stearns. Kendall Watson looked all right in his games as well, too. Might as well save a little bit of money, and his contract was going to be guaranteed after this week anyway.
Well, we've been talking about it for 3 weeks. Where was the shoe was going to drop after all this receiver depth when all these players came back with KSB and Walker, and it was even before Winnipeg came back, and now Winnipeg's playing, so they're like, oh well, I guess we're cutting Walker. It had to happen, unfortunately, and he was signed to be a relief valve for Trevor Harris. Now that Trevor Harris isn't playing, they don't need to worry about it.
All right. Do you guys think the defense will repeat their performance? Not from last week, obviously, but against BC a few weeks ago when they lost 19. What was it? 19-9, 19-6. I forget what it was. But they only gave up 19 points, and Vernon Adams looked awful until he got injured in that game. They got pressure on him, and then they did pretty well against Dane Evans as well, too. Do you guys see the defense redoing that performance? No?
Word, Steve.
No, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why in 2 words. Roland Milligan. There's a big difference in their defensive backfield since the last time we played them, and he is a huge part of our defensive success, and why, if you've watched over the last 3 weeks, there has been a swift decline in the defense's ability to make stops. They haven't been getting scored on quite like they were last week, but they haven't been as successful as they were to start the season. Until he comes back, you're going to see some struggling against some of these top tier offenses, and BC's might be the best offense in the league.
Greg?
Yeah, I don't know. I want to believe, but everything about this team right now, I don't know who's going to show up, and that is what scares me. One game, the defense looks lights out and like, yeah, that's the defense we know they're going to be, and the next week they just look lazy and lethargic and can't get any pressure. So I don't know, and all I want to see is some consistency. So I'm hoping they hold the game tight because I don't want to go to see a blowout this week. I really don't.
Okay, now hear me out on this. I typically don't cheer for any teams to win or lose. I'm the ultimate Rob Lowe. I just want to be entertained. Let me wear my CFL hat, my CFL shirt, right? Just stand there and clap. I want to see good plays. I don't want anybody to get hurt. I want to be entertained. Obviously, I do want the Riders to win, but ultimately, I just want to have a good game and be entertained. Hear me out on this. I want the Riders to lose this week. I want it to be a blowout. For one reason. Because I think that would be the only way they fire Craig Dickenson and move on. It's going to happen at the end of the year. Craig Dickenson is not going to be the head coach in 2024. It's just not going to happen. Barring, even if they win the Grey Cup, I can't see it happening. It's just not going to happen. Lose this game, get blown out, have the bye week, put whoever you want there. I don't care who it is. It doesn't matter. Make it Naaman Roosevelt. Let him coach the team. He'd probably get more out of him than Craig Dickenson is right now. And at least I think he'd be completely honest about things and not give awful cliche answers. For one game only, I want the Riders to get blown out.
But will Naaman love the players?
But if nothing happens after that, it'd be tougher on him, that's for sure. Although I will say this about Craig Dickenson. One thing he's done good this year is the discipline. The discipline of the team has been pretty decent this year. That was a huge, huge concern last year, especially in the second half when the team completely gave up on him. They stopped playing for him. And penalties galore. We haven't seen that this year, at least not yet, but we haven't seen it. And he does deserve some kudos for that. And I know he addressed it earlier in the year, saying that was going to be a focus to make sure this team isn't taking unnecessary penalties. And while you can play to the whistle, you're not going to play past the whistle. You're not going to take those 15-yard unnecessary roughness ones. And generally speaking, they haven't done that. So I do have to give kudos to Craig Dickenson for that, because that's one thing that he did work on with the team, and it has worked out.
We're going to have an hour-long episode here, and all anybody's going to remember from it is Piffles podcast, Rider fan co-host, hopes for Rider loss.
On 3 Down Nation?
That's going to be the
3 Down
only
Nation.
thing people will hear from the last hour.
Put that headline out there. Put that headline out there. Go for it. Good.
Yeah. Yeah. Alex just wants that birthday present.
And then,
that's right.
And then,
you
subtitle
teased me earlier.
Makes fun of Hodges' hat.
All right. Well, we've been doing this. Let's try it again. There was no impact players last week. Pick one this week, both offensive and defense.
Defense, I'm going with Amari Henderson. We need him to show up. He's been pretty solid these last few weeks. Had a hell of a game this last week against Montreal. They only threw his way twice. Or no, they only completed 2 passes in his direction for -2 yards. If we can get that out of him every week, that's probably good for our defense, I would say. I would like to see more of that. So Henderson's my defensive impact
this
player.
one might come to bite me in the butt, but effing Nick Marshall, Keon Hatcher, like BC's got some good receivers. He's going to be busy all game. It's either going to be really, really good, or Alex is going to get his wish, because if he has a bad game against these receivers, it's going to be a long game.
Defense, I'm going to go Micah Johnson. I think just being able to, I think he had his best game against BC earlier. The amount of pressure he's able to get on the inside, forcing one-on-ones on the outside. That's what they'll need to do to stop Vernon Adams, is get that pressure on him instantly, the way that they did in BC Place a few weeks ago. So he's going to have to put in a huge game. I am going to cop out on offense, though. I'm going to take 5. And that's going to be the O-line. They have to play well. They have to. And it has to be run blocking. If you can kill the clock, and even if you end up getting field goals, I know field goals aren't really going to beat BC, but if you can keep BC off the field and still get some points, that's the only chance they have of winning this game to me.
Go ahead, Steve.
I'm going to go with, I want to go with Jamal Morrow, but I feel like that's too simple of an answer. Jake Delagala is too simple of an answer. Go with Jareth Stearns again. I think he's that, that 3rd, 4th receiver that you need to have a breakout game against a defense like BC. They're a defense that doesn't give up a lot of long plays. They don't You're not getting a lot of yards after catch. You have to make do with what you got, and he's a solid, over the middle receiver that I think they need in this one.
See, I thought about going running game. You didn't take Morrow. I'm actually going to say Thomas Bertrand Hudon, the rookie. I think he's going to surprise some people in some off when Morrow gets a break. So I think he might get his first touchdown as a rider this game. I'm thinking.
He had some good carries last
Bonus,
week.
he's been solid on special teams too.
All right, well, let's take a look at these 4 games this week, and really quickly, I know Steve, your battery's almost dying here, so we got to rip through this for you.
Yeah.
It's funnier if he drops out.
Edmonton at Hamilton. Yeah, Edmonton at Hamilton. My guess is that Hamilton was favored by 3.5.
Yeah, I'd say 4.5
Started at
for
4.
Hamilton.
It is now at -5.5.
Everyone's on Edmonton this week. I don't see it. Hamilton. I'll take Hamilton to cover. Sure.
I'm going to take Hamilton or Edmonton. I just told you I think that they turn their season around and maybe fight for a playoff spot. I gotta take them off the bat.
I think Hamilton's going to cover as well.
Game 2, Winnipeg at Calgary. Winnipeg's got to be favored by like 7.5 or 8.5.
I'm gonna go 6.5.
Open at 6.5 is now at 7.
Yeah, give me Winnipeg.
With the touchdown easily.
Winnipeg to cover.
Hey, big game in the East, actually, in terms of standings. Montreal at Ottawa. My guess is Montreal is favored by 2 points.
I'm gonna go 3.5.
Alex is dialed in
for
here.
Ottawa.
Started at -1.5. It is now at 2.5 for Montreal. I'm actually surprised as I thought.
Yeah, I'll take-
I
I was
thought Montreal would be higher.
I was gonna say Montreal until I saw the look on your face as I started talking, going, "Oh, is Alex that far off? Okay, I'll switch." Sometimes you got to read the guy, not the stats. Apparently, I can't do that. I'm a terrible poker player.
That reminds me. Let's have a poker game. Yeah, I like Montreal with the points.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Montreal and the points.
And BC at Saskatchewan to end the week. I think it started off with BC being, a 7.5 favorite, which I thought was way too low. So I would have bet right away on BC.
I'm pretty sure in
on
our
that.
DMs I said if BC is anything but less than 10 points, it's a joke. So it is now. It is
I'm going to say
exactly
9.5.
It started off at 7.5. It is now at 9.5.
Yeah, I'll still take BC to cover that.
I'm actually going to take the Riders to cover. I think the Riders are going to. I don't think Alex is going to get his birthday wish.
This one hurts. I'm the eternal optimist, but no. Happy birthday, Alex. Riders lose by 2 scores.
2 scores isn't a blowout.
Well, depends on how late the Riders get their points,
Garbage
right?
time points still count to betters. It doesn't matter when you get them.
Damn straight it does. Fantasy football too. All right. Well, I think that's it for us this week. Then maybe next week we'll have a change in management of some sort here in Saskatchewan to talk about. We had one last week in Hamilton. We had this one with Victor Cui in Edmonton, and I don't know. Maybe we'll have one in Saskatchewan next week. So we'll figure it out. But otherwise, hope everybody has a good week, good weekend, and enjoys the game. I do hope the game's close. As much as I say I want the Riders to get it. And there goes Steve. We did it. As much as I do want to see changes made here in Saskatchewan, I do want it to be a good game. I really do. And I it's better if the Riders keep it close. So I hope it's a good game. I really do.
And
So
for those listening, Steve dropped out because he apparently, as much as we hope for a good game, we also hope Steve finds a charge cable for his laptop.
Well, I guess we'll just wrap it up here then. Piffles Podcast, brought to you by our great friends at Dairy Queen on Elphinstone Street and Sass Drive in Regina. Special thanks, as always, go to Kathy Festian of Royal LePage Regina Realty and Churchill Brewing Company for their support making the show possible. Thanks for listening on your podcast platform. Thanks for watching on YouTube. And, of course, our new viewers on SaskTel Max, thank you as well. This is Tyler Gilbert. Ghost Behind Your Mind.